3.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Diane Meyerhoff, host for tonight's Essex Selectboard Candidate Forum, part of Channel 17's ongoing town meeting coverage for 2020. Tonight's show is being aired live on Channel 17, streamed live on the Channel 17 website, and will be available via podcast. We welcome your comments and questions. If you're watching this program live, please join the conversation at 862-3966. Tonight, I'm joined by Vince Franco and Andy Watts. Thank you both so much for coming out tonight. We appreciate it. Both Vince and Andy are actually running unopposed. There are two three-year seats on the select board currently open. Since the candidates are running unopposed, we'll be less formal with our conversation tonight. So, but to start, I asked each of them to talk a little bit about why they're running for office, what their qualifications are for office, and then we'll have a series of prepared questions and a dialogue. So, Vince, let's start with you. Tell me,
All right.
Why are you running for council?
Well, I love the community of Essex, and I wanted to give back. I bought my first place, and Essex was #1 on my list, and I just want to help the community out.
Great, great. And Andy?
Yeah, well, I've, as the incumbent,
A veteran, yes, yes.
Been on the select board for 6 years now. This is indeed, I'm just finishing my second term. And there's a couple of things I guess I want to, continue to follow through the merger discussion, which hopefully leads to a vote this November. I want to go through that. We also have a few interesting things coming toward us, like the cannabis tax and regulate situation that may be impacting local communities. I'd like to be involved with that. We've also had a deep discussion about firearms discharge in Essex over the past year, which has kind of been tabled as we've been working through the merger discussion, and that needs to come back around. So that'll be another big discussion that's coming up that I'd like to stay on to participate in.
Great. It's interesting. A lot of times when we do these forums, people talk about housing costs, infrastructure, water, wastewater, stormwater, etc., like that. And it's interesting that your issues are a little different than what I would have expected you to say. So I'm interested. We'll certainly talk about the merger, but talk about how the cannabis regulations would affect towns, because that's not something I normally hear.
Yeah. So the current bill, the way it's worded today, there's no no option for the town to tax sales. Okay. They're looking, I think, right now what's proposed is a fee structure, much like alcohol licenses are, so it's an annual fee that you pay in order to have a license to sell your product. And that's a very small amount of money relative to what tax could be. So that's one issue that could come, is, we've got to deal with. If there's, we don't know yet what the impacts will be to, mental health situations or police support or so forth. So
there's actually no sales tax per se. Then is that what you mean, or is it part of the normal
there was
sales tax?
The earlier version of the bill.
Okay.
The earlier version of the bill included the option of a town to levy a 2% local option tax specific to cannabis sales, and that's in its current form has been stripped out.
So it's is there a state sales tax still?
So the
Probably,
I don't, it's not clear to me.
Interesting.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
and the other thing too is that once it becomes legal, we won't, our zoning doesn't account for that yet, and so we don't have the opportunity to deal with, where businesses can be established until after it's legal, and once one's established, it's grandfathered in. So you can't disallow something that's there before you have your zoning in place. So that's another tricky thing that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. I appreciate hearing the sort of local issue, because it's not something that I hear very often, honestly. Yeah, great. So tell me, we're actually going to have a presentation later on the Essex town budget, but I'm curious, do you all support that budget for FY21? So it's actually next year's budget.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a budget expert by any stretch of the means. I think after a few years on the select board, I'll probably have a better idea. But I would like to see the property tax increase, get down closer to the 2% mark if that's possible.
What is it set at now?
It's 3.4% up from FY20 to FY21 by the calculations that I did.
Okay.
Just to maybe help impact or lessen the impact to people on fixed incomes or lower incomes. And any renters pay property taxes through higher rent. So.
Right, which isn't always so clear to everyone, but that's an important one to let people know about. Yeah. Andy, your thoughts?
Yeah, I've already voted in support of it, so I can't, I really can't say no.
Okay.
But I guess to address it's really difficult to keep the budget increases very low because there's a lot of contractual obligations with regard to our union employees, and we have no control at all over health benefits, costs. And so those two things are the bigger drivers of the budget increases. We are this year not adding any new headcount. Over the past couple of years, we've added a couple of positions. Additional police officers because we're definitely shy of police officers and need more. And so it's, as I said, it's a challenge to keep it below 2%. One of the things that maybe we could do is try to give back some of our surplus, give back more of the surplus to keep it down for a couple of years, but I don't think you can sustain that.
Right. So is the surplus kind of a rainy day fund? I mean, it's something you sort of hold on to in case something unexpected happens?
Yeah, we have a policy where we're allowed to reserve 15% of if the surplus money from the previous year is more than 15% of the budget, or up to 15%, I should say, can be saved for a rainy day fund. Right. Okay. So, for example, when Hurricane Irene came through, we had cash in our pockets to go fix the stuff and then get reimbursed from the federal government. We didn't have to wait to get money to fix our infrastructure. So we do have a healthy fund like this. It is, as I said, it's 15% of. And it didn't all come from one year. It gradually increased, and the policy says that we're supposed to give the excess back to the taxpayers, but it's very difficult to convince people to do that. They want to put it against capital projects or against other things that do defer future taxation, but. It's difficult to convince people to give it back.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and we certainly, many of the towns talk about this. Sometimes they try to sort of buy down the increase, but again, it's a one-time fix normally, and then the next year, sometimes
then you got to explain next year's increase.
Exactly. You feel like, well, wait a minute, we didn't, So we certainly hear that a lot. But it's interesting that your rainy day fund was indeed for a very rainy day. Yes.
Yes.
But I'm sure it made it a lot easier. Now the other, the bond request. There's also a bond request from the Water District, which I have to say I'm honestly not all that familiar with, other than knowing it's about a $3.5 million worth of infrastructure improvements for Colchester and Essex. Is that right? Those two towns?
Yes.
Yeah. Can either of you sort of speak to that? Because sort of if you're supporting it and what it's about.
Well, it's an infrastructure improvement that it's actually paid for by all CWD communities. There's some debt that's being retired, so they're getting some new debt.
Okay.
And I guess the net effect is that it doesn't increase it gets paid in the wholesale water price.
Okay.
And so everybody in the water district pays for it. It's kind of an interesting situation, though, where people who aren't connected to the water system get to vote on whether or not the water system takes on this debt. Because the Chittenden Water District is itself a municipality, has the ability to bond on its own, and so they hold the debt. It's not our debt, but again, people that are in our town that have a well get to vote. So it's a little odd. But,
right, but there would really be no way to exclude them, I suppose, right?
Right.
It'd be kind of hard to do that. Yeah.
That would be difficult.
And it's not going to actually impact those folks because the payments are through their water bills, right? Essentially.
It doesn't.
And would you expect the water bills to increase, or because the debt's being retired, they'll end up being about the same? Is that the theory, at least?
Yeah, the theory. What was explained in the material that was distributed about it says it's a net zero impact. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of hard to be against it, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I only have a cursory knowledge of like the details of the plan, but I think it's vital that we maintain our infrastructure, especially because Essex is growing, and we're also going to we don't want to have costly repairs down the road because we've neglected something. And I think that even if you do have a well, voting yes on this is probably a good idea because your businesses are going to be hooked up to water, and so if you're going to the outlets or something like that, and the water main breaks, well, maybe you're not going to be able to go get a Mad Taco or something like that. I don't know. Who knows?
Or something worse, you have to boil your water, as we did in Burlington very recently. It makes for some pretty unhappy folks.
Vince mentioned the outlets, or the Essex Experience, or whatever it's called now.
I didn't know it.
It's called the Essex Experience.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, new name. Okay.
The owner's trying to get more
Water capacity?
experiential stuff in it. But anyway, that's the high point of town.
Yeah.
And there's also some congregate housing that's gone up in there. And there was a proposal to put 6 stories in that area. Well, the problem with 6 stories in that area is you don't have enough water pressure to put out a fire.
Interesting.
And so that's part of what this does, is it gives a second water source. You can get more water there. You still don't have enough pressure. You have to have a pumper truck to get it. Would have to get. And so I don't think there'll ever be a 6-story building, because you'd have to put either a reservoir on the roof.
Oh, wow.
Or have your own water pump to pump.
Well, you never know. Housing gets expensive enough, I suppose. At some point, it might be worth it. I mean, I never thought there'd be so much underground parking in the area, to be honest with you. I mean, when I came, I don't think there, other than in very downtown, large buildings. But I'm amazed at how many units now have underground parking. So who knows? We should never say never, but maybe not in our lifetime. Topic we should chat about is certainly merger, what's happening between the village and the town. Love to hear kind of your thoughts on the matter, and what you see happening over the next year or so. So, do you want to start?
Actually, Andy, do you want to go first? You have more experience than I do.
Well,
Fair.
I had several neighbors ask me recently to set aside some time to have a conversation with them about this, and so I said, well, why don't we all just get together at once? So one of my neighbors hosted a discussion with Andy night, and a lot of the discussion. I live outside the village, and so the expectation is that in a merger situation, the $3.5 million that the village has to collect in taxes gets spread over everybody in the town. And so nominally the village tax rate will go lower, and the tax rate outside the village will go higher. And so all of the people in the discussion were from outside the village, so all of their taxes were going to go up. One of them is a business property owner in the village, and so he was in favor, very much in favor, because of it affects his business. But others are the feedback I'm getting from people is they think that the village needs to give something up, and there's a lot of resistance to that. Others on the trustees or the select board will say, well, we started this whole discussion saying that we're not going to reduce any services. It's going to be everything the same, just one government. And so there's no. It feels to people outside of the village, it feels like there's no willingness to compromise. And I kind of think that if the village is for it and the town is split, that it'll pass.
Okay. Because just the way the voting works.
Because the way the voting works.
Yeah. And apparently the village and the town, which this surprised me, are similar in population. I feel like that's changed a lot
within 10 or something like that.
Yeah,
It's
okay, it's kind of fascinating.
crazy close
and that
number.
hasn't always been the case, though, right?
It has not.
Because I mean, I've been here 30 years, and this has been under discussion for at least all the time I've been here.
And there's the populations are almost the same. There's more registered voters in the village than outside.
In the village, oh, that's interesting.
So the registered voter difference.
Is that about age? That's not about age. That's just about who registered, right? That's not demographic.
I don't know. I don't know if families are larger outside or not. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little easier to get to the polls in the village if you live in the village. It's harder in the town. It's more spread out, but
Yeah, but now you can vote early, you can vote
Yeah,
at town
that's-
hall. I
yeah.
mean, we've got so many more options than we used to have, which is great. Interesting.
So I'm, and I guess I agree with the sentiment that I think in order to pass and not have ongoing acrimony,
Yeah.
I think the village needs to appear to have compromised somewhere, and the proposal does include a 12-year tax transition where it won't transition all in 1 year.
Okay.
It will be 1/12, 1/12, 1/12. You know,
Oh,
they'll
okay.
slowly approach each
Sure.
other. All debt is staying with the village. Debt is staying with the village. There's also the case of the water rates. You know, the village has lower water rates. They're going to equalize those so that
Why is that?
they
It's all through C- the-
they have less costs. Because, I told you that the town is physically higher than the village. You got to pump the water up.
Okay.
You know.
Wow. All right. Yeah. And this was something I would never think of, to be honest with
and
you.
then the
Okay.
other side is you got to pump the sewage out too.
Sure.
And
you
so
have- the
it's
town has further to go.
yeah.
Okay.
So there's more infrastructure, so
Okay.
it costs more. So there's some trade-off there that village water rates will go up, but I don't think it's not near enough to offset the tax
Right.
increase outside. But I don't know. I think that there's definitely trying to make it more of a balance, but
Sure.
without giving something up, I think the acrimony is still going to be there.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, because in many ways there are things you've already merged, right? I mean, you have only one town city manager. I don't know how you say it, town manager, I guess. And there's certain departments I think that have already merged, right?
The finance department, it's a little awkward though because they're still within the finance department or within the merged departments or consolidated, I guess they're called, consolidated
yes, you're right,
departments.
consolidated.
There are both village and town employees, and the town employees are union members, and the village employees have an association. And so that's the hard part.
Sort of the harmonizing everything, yes?
Is figuring out, and there's some acrimony about who's in charge, and there's some things going on there. We also have two libraries, which how do you deal with that? They have their own trustee boards that run them.
Okay.
So
Yeah, and I guess when I was talking to someone along the way, they said that one of the big issues is the unionized folks like police, fire, et cetera. That's the hardest one to actually bring together. Some of these other ones
well,
you can.
the police is already
police is already done.
it's
okay.
been for years
Okay.
been a shared service.
Okay.
So I think we're set there, but it's the folks that work in the offices
Yeah.
and you can't just. I suppose you could. It would cost a lot to just rise to the highest level
Sure. Right.
of benefits, so that everybody gets. You go to the highest common denominator or numerator, whichever one is the right term there. But
That could be costly.
yeah.
But
yeah.
it's pretty hard to take things away.
Right.
Right. That's probably maybe that's the message of the whole thing, right? It's always hard to take things away.
Right.
Always easier
Right.
to add them. But now you said there was potentially a vote coming up in the next year or so. Did you mention that about
So the target, right, is November this year,
2020.
2020,
Oh,
that
okay.
we would have a vote, yes or no, on the merger proposal. There's a subcommittee that's been formed. I'm on the subcommittee. There's 2 select board members and 2 trustees. They're working on this. Oh, you'll be asked to join that subcommittee.
Oh, will I?
Yeah,
Lovely.
because there's this awkward situation where the 2 trustees, of course, live in the village,
right?
and the 2 select board members that are on this
Sure.
governance subcommittee live outside of the village.
Okay.
So there's the
The balance to be struck.
the some would say attempted a balance,
Okay.
Yeah.
because technically we have to represent all town residents, which includes the
Yeah.
village.
Because you're at large.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Which is the other discussion you're going to have later.
Sure. Yes. Yes.
And so we're working on a charter change proposal that would go hopefully before the voters in November.
And would it actually, I mean, would it sort of, the remaining departments that aren't together, I mean, how big of a discussion is it? How big of an item is it? Is it really merging, calling them one town and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or how?
So the charter change would get you to one community with one governing board.
Okay.
And then you'd have to go through all of the HR issues of transitioning folks from being village employees to being town employees.
Okay.
And what benefits are going to be, what pay scales are going to be, and all of that.
Okay. So the big pieces would be the consolidated of the actual government departments, and then what the governance structure is, the select board, or what happens to the trustees, and was that part of it also?
The transition terms, right, would talk about the, right, how you get to a new board. There's a proposal to have 3, 2, and 2, 3 at large, 2 from the village, 2 from
Okay.
outside the village, for a period of 5 years to work through all of the HR issues of combining the rest of the town, the administration.
Okay.
And then during that 5 years, also that board has to decide whether or not to, because then it defaults back to at large after 5 years.
Okay.
This is the proposal. This is just a proposal. It's
Right.
still being discussed.
Sure,
But
sure.
it would divert to, unless the board chose to go to some sort of representative model or other.
Which is like a ward
Governance.
model or something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah,
that means, yes.
yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
Interesting. So and so you're all involved in the discussions at this point, so it's not, I can't say, do you have support at this point, because you're not really there yet, is that
We
fair
don't
to say?
have a
Yeah.
finished plan yet.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
There's
So
not-
a lot
it's-
of work to do between now and November, it sounds like.
Yeah. It also includes the whole tax transition thing.
Sure.
And yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of big topics to make sense out of. Huh, okay, so that's potentially up in November, but could also decide to hold off on it. I mean, that's not for sure that you'll be doing it then, is it? Is there anything that's guiding that or pushing that to the date?
The November 2020 was chosen because we expect a lot of people to go vote,
Okay,
because it's a
Big year.
presidential election
Sure.
also. So.
sure, okay. Well, that makes sense. All right. So,
You can ask Vince's favorite
Yeah.
question.
oh yeah, the favorite question. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So this is sort of completely off
I've
topic.
been
I feel like
talking
we're
too
just
much.
we're moving off.
Yeah.
So do you think that national politics is having an impact on the local politics in Essex? And I know, Vince, you have something you'd like to add to this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely does, not in like a partisan type of way, but I think in the fact that like what's going on in the national stage is kind of distracting us from the things that we can control in our local governments. You have a much larger voice when you come and talk to Andy, or when you come and talk to anyone else on your local select board. They're there to they're like your legislator or like representative to constituent ratio is a lot lower, and they're a lot more accessible. So whereas you don't have the power to change what's going on in the White House right now, you only have that power in November. You have the power to talk to one of your local select board members, or to have your have your voice heard at like a hearing or a public forum or something like that. And so that's my opinion on the whole national thing. I think we need to start looking closer into our local communities, doing what we can to make our local communities better, paying attention to the national stage, making sure that we're educated about national issues, but we have work to do here. Let's look close to what we can do in the now.
And is that one of the things that prompted you to run?
Yeah, I mean, I have my frustrations with national politics, and so this is kind of something that I feel like I can do to help out, that I have more control over, and it's more accessible.
I think that's fair to say, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. And tell me, are there things in particular that you're interested in diving into when you get started on your first day at the select board meetings?
I mean, it's just for me, it's going to be a huge learning experience. I really just want to start close my mouth and start educating myself. I mean, I have some opinions that I have from living in Essex for the last year and change, and I want to just really like test those opinions, test those preconceptions, make sure that what I'm seeing is the actual facts, the truth, and kind of like integrate new facts and truths into my perception so that I can better understand issues.
Anything burning there that's kind of just you're thinking, oh, I really want to learn more about that particular thing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely like merger's a big one, but for like a personal pet project kind of thing, like I'm a mountain biker. I love mountain biking. I love being outdoors. Saxon Hill, making sure that the trails there are conserved at the best conserved the best they can be. That we're working well with the like industrial, commercial side of that. There's a lot of industrial and commercial buildings around Saxon Hill, making sure that we're working well with the people who own that land and are developing that land so that we can try to preserve as much as we can, but without like hampering businesses. So I mean, ideally as a mountain biker, I'd love to see it all be trails, but I know that that's not always, that's not always going to be a reality. So trying to, but trying to be that voice for, a significant part of Chittenden County that goes to Saxon Hill to mountain bike after work.
I think there's a lot of those folks. I've heard very, very good things about it.
Oh yeah, sometimes you can't find a place to park.
Well, now there's something maybe
That's
that's to work on.
Select-board issue.
Yeah. So.
Has that come up at the select board?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And is it just one of those things that's really hard to come up with, to figure out a way?
Oh, you try, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know from personal experience, like there were people parking on people's lawns and across from their house, and it was getting kind of ridiculous. Like even as a mountain biker, I felt, pretty bad about like what I saw some of my fellow mountain bikers doing to residents, and it's like, you have someone who moves in to this house on a dead end dirt road, and then all of a sudden mountain biking explodes and it becomes this mecca of people or mecca for mountain bikers to go and mountain bike in Chittenden County. And so I think, we need to have better, like the mountain biking community owes it to the residents around the trails to be good stewards of the land and to be good, users of that land and not to hurt local people. I mean, because, they live there. It's their house. That's their home. And to have, 50 to 100 cars a day going in and out of that place, that's quite a lot of traffic.
It's kind of like love to death.
Yeah,
if we're not
it is.
careful.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I mean, and I will say Essex has done a great job with helping build more parking and parking that's away from residential areas. Like there's the new lot on Saxon Hill that's stone that's been really good, and I don't need to park, and no mountain biker really needs to park next to someone's house to go mountain biking anymore.
That's awesome. You should have to ride to get there, right?
So I live off of Sand Hill Road, and I picked my place so that I could ride up the hill, up Saxon Hollow Drive, and go over to Saxon without having to take a car.
Okay,
So
great.
it was part of the reason why I chose where I live in Essex.
Great. Well, we're just about out of time. I hope that
right.
went quickly certainly for me. And I want to be sure we let everyone know what they need to do on town meeting day or before town meeting day. Now, I believe I have this correct. You have your town meeting on Monday the 2nd, yes?
Yes, we do.
At 7:30 at the Essex High School.
Yep, there's dinner beforehand at 6:30.
Let's not miss that, 6:30 dinner. And that's going to be consideration of the town budget, right? You do a voice vote on the budget.
Correct.
On Monday night. So that's important for folks to know that.
We also have a public to be heard section where I'm sure there'll be discussion about the
Okay.
the 3-3 vote and
Okay.
anything else anybody wants to talk
Great.
about.
So it's a
yeah.
chance to informational meeting as well, right? Chance to ask questions. But don't forget about dinner at 6:30. And then the following day, Tuesday, March 3rd, of course, polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that's at the Essex High School and the Essex Middle School, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And of course, remember, you can always vote early. I always forget to tell folks, you don't have to vote on town meeting day. You always can vote early at town clerk's office and just town clerk's office? Village? No, just town, right?
The town office,
Just
right.
the town office, yeah. Okay, so people can certainly get a ballot there as well. So we want you to vote early or on Tuesday, March 3rd, and we want you to tune in for our live election results program where we bring you all the results as they are tabulated. So please join us on town meeting day at 7 p.m. and we will see you there. Thank you.